September 9, 2019. And I'll ask the CAO if there's any late items to add to the agenda.
We have no items. Thank you very much, Mayor.
I look for a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. Councillor Grace, seconder, please. Second, Councillor Mattes. Further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of prior minutes. Item E1, adoption of August 26th, 2019 regular open council meeting minutes. So moved by Councillor Schwarzenberg, seconded by Councillor Rice. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Item F1, August 26, 2019, committee meeting minutes for receipt. That the August 26, 2019 committee of the whole meeting minutes be received. Mover, Councillor Avnit, seconded by Councillor Mattes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item F2, we have a verbal report from Chairman Mattes on the committee of the whole meeting this afternoon.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a very light agenda. 2 items. The first item was the 2018 annual water report. It was a pretty special report given by our Director of Operations, Sharon. We used billions of liters of water last year. What it boiled down to, the numbers were quite large. I think it was in the neighborhood of 30 billion in domestic water, if I remember correctly. After that, we had a delegation from the Frank Venables Theatre Operating Society for their annual budget request. We had the Director Kael from the RUS here as well, with the Chief Financial Officer from the RUS to listen to the presentation. All in all, it was a good presentation. Went very well. We gave them some ideas. They are going to be asking for an increase of $2,500 over last year's budget. Not an insignificant number, but not a significant number. But overall, quite manageable. And that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Mattes. Moving to water matters. Item G1, 2019 irrigation turnoff and canal shutdown dates. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will pass this over to our Director of Operations to take you through his report.
Thank you, Your Worship and Councillors. The purpose of this report is to determine the irrigation turnoff dates for 2019 for the agricultural season customers using pressured water from the Oliver irrigation water system, and also determine the canal cease diversion date for the end of the agriculture season altogether. So staff are proposing that irrigation turnoff would be on Tuesday, October 8th, 2019, and canal cease diversion would be Tuesday, October 29th, 2019 for our late irrigation users. I've provided a report, always provide some stats, previous years, just to give everyone an idea of, where we fall. And for those staff, for those council members that are a little newer, usually the shutoffs take 3 to 4 days to fully shut everybody that wants to be off on that irrigation shutoff date. And then the cease diversion, it takes, we can shut the gates right away, but then we have to divert the water and close down all the pump houses and stuff. It takes another couple days. So just to give council an idea, it is about $1.70 a day per acre for late water too. So, and if you were a customer that had 10 acres, and this is hypothetical, it cost them an additional $17 a day. So approximately $340 if they were to use it right to the end of the month till our shut off. Late irrigation applications seem to be fairly consistent the last few years. Last year we had 25 requests for late water. 2017 we had 30, and 2016 we had 24. So there seem to be around that range. And as you can see on the irrigation and diversion season records, we have dates going back to 2002 indicating when the irrigation systems have shut down and ceased diversion. Do you have any questions or any suggested dates, changes?
I would move the recommendation, Your Worship. I mean, we're getting rain now. I mean, we should be fine. Yeah. And they're in line with other years, so I just move the recommendation of October the 8th and diversion is October 29th.
Do you have a seconder? Sidhu. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item G2, 2020 council meeting schedule for Hill.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will pass this over to the corporate officer for.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the 2020 council meeting schedule. Each year, the town, following the community charter, is to publish a list of regular meetings for council for the upcoming year. And I've attached a list of dates for your consideration. As you know, our regular council meetings are the second and fourth Monday of each month, and we postpone them to a Tuesday if it's a statutory holiday. For this year, it's suggested to postpone the early June meeting to the Tuesday, June 9th, as the FCM convention goes June 4th to 7th. So you would need the 8th for a travel day to get back into British Columbia. We also accommodate a regular summer break in August, and so it's recommended to cancel the August 10th meeting. That leaves about a 3-week break in between meetings. If there are some planning matters that require council's attention, we have in the past held a special meeting. The 2020 UBCM convention is September 21st to the 25th, so I'm recommending cancellation of the September 21st meeting. On the list, it also notes the acting mayor's schedule, which mirrors the schedule that's in place for 2019. So the recommendation before council is to approve the 2020 regular open meeting schedule and proceed with the public notification. As required on the charter, we have to advertise 2 times in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions, comments?
And move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Benjamina, second by Councillor Grace. Any further discussion? Seeing now, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item G3, report from one of Councillor Sidhu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the 2 meetings today.
Okay. Councillor Machial.
Very busy, personal, apple harvest and everything else, but just for council just this afternoon.
Okay. Well, let's move to delegations and petitions. I'll invite the outgoing ambassadors, Enola, Avnit, Sidhu, and Zepeda to come to the podium to receive some plaques and certificates and some awards, I believe.
But this would go to 8.
Sorry.
I can stay there.
Maybe you can come in front of the podium.
Yeah.
Here.
I got the report, just read my report. I'm enjoying the heated government.
So we give them their flowers and.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Do what you need to do.
Jennifer?
Yeah, do that.
Behind? All right.
Good idea.
announcement, and again, you guys did an awesome job representing this community, and very helpful to council and the town of Oliver, so thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the new ambassadors, Sharon, Grewal, Myaia, Koenig, Koteles, and Phat. Come on. And we'll get you guys sworn in.
So.
How do we do this now?
I, Phat.
I, Myaia Koenig,
I, Sharon Grewal,
And I, Koteles.
do hereby promise and swear that to the best of my ability and judgment, I will fulfill my duty as youth ambassador to the town of Oliver and rural Oliver faithfully, honestly, and impartially, and to promote goodwill and leadership in all that I do.
Lisa?
just come in front of the podium.
Picture?
Step forward so that the mayor can get in there when you Yeah, we can make that look slow.
Okay.
You might want to take the yellow tags off.
Thank you.
I'll say congratulations to our new ambassadors. I know you'll do an awesome job representing this community, and look forward to working with you over the next year. Thank you. Next delegation is the Bridge Youth and Family Services, Celine Thompson and John Gersenko. I'd like you guys to come up. And you're all right. You got 10 minutes and speak clearly into the microphone.
Absolutely, I will. Is this okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
That was such a pleasure to watch, so thank you for having us.
Not back to fault.
Isn't it? Anyway. So first, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this town council this evening. As you said, my name is Celine Thompson. I'm the executive director of the Bridge Youth and Family Services. John Yaroshenko is my colleague and the director of recovery and addictions programs. We're honored to be with you on the traditional and unceded territory of the Siliko Okanagan people. This evening, I'm going to tell you about a passion project of the Bridge, the Youth Recovery House. Our aim in the early days of this campaign is to seek out people and groups of influence and help spread the word about and commitment to this essential service. But first, I'll start with a bit about ourselves. We've been a touchstone for some of the most vulnerable families in the Okanagan for almost 50 years. We actually celebrate our 50th anniversary next month. As an accredited agency, we achieve and maintain the highest international standards of professional practice. And in all of our 5 decades of service, we've continuously been inspired by a volunteer board of directors that it maintains resources and efficiencies and yet always compels us to be innovative and compassionate and moving us forward. We embrace the Okanagan community with 2 distinct arms of service. Since inception, we have focused on communities and families. We work preventatively with new parents and their infants. We counsel families who are struggling with their role. And we are a leader in working on behalf of the ministry with young people in our community who are the most marginalized, street entrenched, and disenfranchised. Our other arm of service includes our substance use resources. As the largest provider of substance use services for the local health authority, we provide supported recovery housing, intensive live-in adult treatment, community-based naloxone training, the street outreach for the supervised mobile injection site in Kelowna and street outreach in West Kelowna, withdrawal management detox for both young people and adults. These 2 arms of service have provided us with a unique vantage point when the BC Provincial Health Officer declared a public health emergency in response to the alarming rise of drug overdoses in our community in 2016. We watched in abject horror when the rate of death for children and young people between the age of 10 and 18 doubled from 2016 to 2017. You can appreciate the young people that passed away in our region are known to us. They're not numbers on a page, and it has shattered us. Given our area of expertise, families in this region call our front desk on a weekly basis looking for treatment for their son or daughter, only to be told none exists here. The extensive wait list for the mere 45 publicly funded spaces in all of British Columbia wastes the small window of opportunity we have with these young people who have gathered their strength and their courage in that moment to pursue recovery. The less than 4 beds we have access to in Myaia at Enola are our closest option, but in addition to a significant and consistent wait list, that resource accepts no child under the age of 17. And we know, based on the admittance to our youth detox program, as well as the data from the coroner's report, that we need places of solace, recovery, and healing for children as young as 13, 12, perhaps even younger. The majority of the participants in our adult treatment center tell us their addiction began in their youth. This reported age of onset is pretty typical and consistent with the literature that's published. An investment in these young people and their families will have ripple effects for this community and our province. We can help stem the tide of poverty, trauma, family breakdown, victimization, homelessness, and mental and physical illness that a lifetime of addiction can often entail. In our view, youth treatment is a preventative strategy that will have significant positive impact on many of the issues that this community and this region identifies as social priorities. Our Youth Recovery House will provide the tools, skills, and resources these children need to succeed while their brain is still developing and receptive to learning new and different ways to live and to cope. We will keep them alive so they can meet their potential and be able to meaningfully contribute to the communities and to the families who raise them. Our vision for the Youth Recovery House began taking shape last year when we embarked on a community-wide dialogue about what the most significant gaps were in our community around substance use resources. Overwhelmingly, of the more than 1,000 people we spoke to, it was the absence of youth living treatment. As a result, it wasn't really surprising to us when Kelowna did its own council or evaluation of community needs for its Journey Home strategy. And again, even though it was not a specific question on the ballot, the demand for increased substance use resources was the overwhelming response. As a result, that homelessness strategy is unique in British Columbia, I think, in that it identifies the increase in treatment spaces and substance use resources in our region as the #1 strategy. We recognize that the new government of British Columbia has identified mental health and substance use as a priority. We also recognize that they are challenged to address years of inadequate investment in resources for families, and in particular families struggling with addiction. Given the need in our communities, however, the Bridge has opted to take a leadership on this file, at least for the time being. We have visited youth treatment programs across the country to inform our vision of having a leading-edge, evidence-based local program. We have begun the process of designing our building based on the literature that shows us how intentional building design can positively influence health outcomes. We have conducted focus groups of young people and parents to inform our program. We have consulted with Indigenous communities and elders to best reflect their needs and aspirations. And a year ago, we launched an ambitious and aggressive $10 million capital campaign and committed $300,000 of our internal resources to this enterprise to ensure every dollar raised from our donors is committed solely to bricks and mortar and treatment. There is no funds taken away for administration. Along the way, we have inspired allies to our cause. We have the support of a number of community partner agencies. Kelowna City Council, in particular its mayor, have expressed their commitment to this cause, and recently as has Peachland. The head of pediatrics of the Kelowna General Hospital is a vocal and ardent advocate, as are many of his colleagues. And the local professional firefighters union, so weary of responding to overdose events, has lent their membership support to our undertaking as a means of preventing the occurrences that tear at their hearts each and every day. Our purpose for presenting to you today is to really spread the word about what we're intending to do and enlist your support for what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you so much for your presentation. Our council actually just, for the first year recognized International Overdose Awareness Day
I saw
on
the
August
shirt.
31st, so I think that this is something that's on our radar now. I spoke to a social worker today from our local Ministry of Children and Family Development office to see what our local need was, and if this was something that she felt that we could use locally here, and she was enthusiastic in her response that yes, absolutely, we could use an in-treatment center here. So I guess a couple questions. One is your intention to build a center in Oliver? And then my second question would be, what do you see from council or from the municipality? What are you looking for from us?
At this point, really just support. We were speaking to a few potential donors about property. None of those donors are in the Oliver area, but it's still early days. Right now, we won't cross anything off the list. I think anything that's in this entire region that we want to serve would be appropriate. We know that a significant part of our program will have young people connecting back to nature. So in my dream vision for this property, it will be a rural property with access to water and trees, and that's very consistent with what the Indigenous communities have told us as well. But we've not selected ground yet.
In terms of specifics, what we love from council is a letter of support stating that you support the initiative as intended for that population, that it's in line with your understanding of what community need is, and something that we could then point to. The challenge with an effort like this is that it crosses lots of different boundaries. It crosses local boundaries for sure. Celine referenced First Nations, and they're overrepresented in the data around people that are overdosing and dying, so we absolutely want to be able to support that population as well. But also from funding boundaries, there's funding from Ministry of Children and Family Development for mental health disorders for young people, but the substance use funding comes from health authorities and through the Ministry of Health. So we really need to bring a coalition of partners together to get something like this done. So we're really trying to kind of leverage and catalyze some local support to be able to have that pressure politically on the province for the ministries to come together and fund the initiative.
One of the things that we really realized in doing our research is how underserved this region is when it comes to substance use or recovery and addictions programs. For our adult services in Kelowna, we know that we would need triple the inventory of our detox and our treatment spaces to come close to meeting Kamloops. And don't even get me going about Vancouver. So it's we've been underserved here for a while, and I think with this particular population, with the young people, it's not a matter of expanding what already exists. There is nothing that exists.
What she had said too is that the youth from our area are being sent to emergency detox in Kelowna, and that they're away from their family and their support system.
For treatment, our young people are being sent to Prince George or Vancouver, so completely away from their local support systems, their families, their schools, their positive peer influences when those are present. So that's really quite disruptive, and then we bring people back into that same environment without, really being able to have a local transition that makes sense.
Anyone else?
I think my question was answered.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you coming. I know this age of youth that you're targeting is one that can have the biggest impact for sure. I know from hearing from cast tables around in Penticton and Kelowna that, like if you can get to these youth when they're in that sort of age where they sort of fall through the cracks, or they're not at a point where they can be held criminally responsible type of thing, they're a group that has some volatility, and being able to support them would be huge for sure.
Yeah, it does. The literature seems to support that as well.
Yeah.
We can really make an impact, and we could never make the assurance they're going to be abstinent from all drugs and alcohol for the rest of their lives. But what we can have reasonable confidence of is they're going to live healthier lives. They are going to be able to cope with the stresses that come across their way. And if they have periods of substance use, it's going to be far more abbreviated than it would have been otherwise.
Councillor Mattes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will make the motion that staff be directed to provide a letter of support to the Bird Society for their endeavors.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further comments, discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we're back soon with more good news.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Second on the motion.
It wasn't up there earlier when I looked.
No.
Dave was speaking into his mic, so we'll
Okay.
Thank you.
Speak into the mic then.
Moving to bylaws. Item 1, permissive tax exemption bylaw 13A6. First of three readings. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to refer this over to Mr. Leahy, and he can provide you with some information because they are, Finance is the one that received the applications with respect to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. What you council has in front of them tonight is the permissive tax exemption bylaw for 3 readings. This process takes place every 4 years. Previous council mandated that it comes forward every 4 years. You can also pass a bylaw if council so wishes to do it every 10 years or once every 10, or you can do it annually. I know I used to do it annually at my previous place at work as well. So anyway, this bylaw as it's put together is for a 4-year permissive tax exemption. The background of this is under the community charter, section 224, on or before October 31st in each year, by a simple majority, council may exempt property from taxation if they meet certain criteria. These criteria that Town of Oliver has provided exemption in the past include used or occupied by a place of public worship, used or occupied by a hospital, used or occupied by a home for elderly citizens constructed with the assistance of aid by the province between 1947 and 74, used for charitable or philanthropic purposes, or used or held by an athletic club or service used for public service purposes. Further background, these permissive exemptions provided by council are in addition to the statutory exemption that the land and improvements may be entitled to under section 220. And what that section actually says in a very concise is it's used for churches primarily. Schools, private schools used to be under that as well, but then they were statutorily exempted just recently, about 5 years ago. But primarily it's only for the footprint of the building. Any of the lands outside of the footprint of the building has to be, if council so wishes, it has to be permissively exempted. It cannot be statutorily exempted. My report goes on to provide much more detail into the background, but I'm going to go into the actual questionnaire results themselves. We received 31 applications, of which 10 are considered statutory exempt under section 220 for the building as well as the land directly beneath the footprint of the building, as I've previously stated. It has been a past practice of council to provide a permissive tax exemption for the remaining lines surrounding these types of properties. I've listed the 8 properties. The United Church of Canada, there's 2 properties. The Synod Diocese of the Kootenai, Seventh-day Adventist Church, St. Paul's Lutheran Church Society, the Roman Catholic Bishop of Nelson, Pentecostal Assemblies, Covenant World of Life. Is that a typo? Is it Word of Life or World of Life? Is it World?
I think it is
Word of life, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oliver Kiwanis Senior Housing properties, there's 2 properties, as well as there's been 2 applications that are classified as heritage or riparian properties which occupy town property. In the past, council has provided full exemption for these properties, and they are the Oliver Heritage Society for the Archives building, land and parking, as well as the museum, the land and improvements on that site as well. Applicants are required to demonstrate that they meet council objectives and may include cultural and recreational opportunities for youth, adults, promotion of the local economy and charitable services, enhancing quality of life, which includes economic, social, and cultural, and delivering services that are more effectively and economically provided then town staff could provide those services. In addition, within the town of Oliver's permissive tax exemption policy, the use of the land and/or improvements must benefit the community in one of the following ways. They must provide recreational facilities for public use, recreation programs to the public, provide programs and/or facilities that are to be used by the youth, seniors, or special needs groups, preserve a heritage important to the community character, preserve an environmentally, ecologically significant area of the community, offers cultural or education programs to the public which promote community spirit, cohesiveness, and/or tolerance, offers services to the public in formal partnership with the municipality. I go further to outline all the applications that were received, the type of services that the clubs or societies or groups are providing to the town of Oliver, and how they meet the criteria of the permissive tax exemption policy. And finally, there is one new application that we've received, and that is from the Desert Sun Counseling and Resource Center. And that application is been requested for 100% of the exemption of the land and improvements that those properties sit on. The Desert Sun, they provide affordable housing for town of Oliver and surrounding areas. They provide services to the most vulnerable members of the community so that all community members experience an enhanced quality of life. Services include counseling, child, youth, and parenting support, community kitchen, senior support, safe home, crisis line, and provide help to individuals in crisis. The facility consists of 18 units rented at rents varying from $450 to $660 per month. There is one house there that remains rented out to a previous tenant, as well as they partner with BC Housings to provide safe housing in Osoyoos and has expanded their services into the town of Oliver. They perform contract counseling services with the school district, as well as the Ministry of Justice. They provide counseling for domestic violence victims, as well as counseling for abused children. They provide parenting skills for new parents within the OCC, the Okanagan Correction Center. And as well, I go on to state what the financial statements indicated, that they have working capital in excess of $250,000 as of the end of April 2019, and their annual budget is in excess of $573,000. They do receive money from the Ministry of Justice, Boys and Girls Club, School District 53, the province of the BC Corrections, Literacy Now, and donations. In summary, the 2020 total permissive tax exemptions are estimated to be approximately $106,000. Public notice, we have to advertise this in the local paper as prescribed by the community charter. We must do that twice, and we also have to indicate the amount of taxes that would be permissively exempted for each of those 3 years. It's just an estimation because we don't know exactly the tax rate that we approximated. The copy of the draft notice is included with this report as attachment 2, and it indicates for those 3 years it's almost $334,000 are exempted. And with that, I will bring my report to a close. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor
I have a question through to possibly Mr. Ray, if you could answer this. With the Desert Sun application, I know that they've listed a lot of things, but they have several offices, one in Osoyoos, one in Oliver, as well as this housing complex. Are all of those activities carried out from the housing complex? Or are they carried out from the other offices that are paying taxes? I guess my concern here, and it's difficult to speak out against this sort of thing, but it's kind of the thin edge of a wedge. We just earlier this evening did a rezoning on an application for community housing for a 46-unit apartment building. Under the criteria, if this is only for the housing of the Desert Sun and not for their offices and not for their other activities, then I would have a hard time supporting that on the basis that then it would not be unreasonable for everyone providing below market housing in Oliver to ask for a tax exemption. So we could expect a similar application from the new people that are building behind the mall on Airport Street. And that's a concern to me. If it's for offices where they're providing counseling and that sort of a thing, I would be more than happy to provide an exemption for that. But if it's strictly for housing, I have some concerns with that. And I know that that opens another can of worms in that we provide tax exemption to the Kiwanis Housing Society for their low-cost housing as well. And how do you say yes to one and no to the other, and no to the third one, or do you say yes to all three? I'm not sure what the answer to the question is, but I'm having some difficulty with it, to be honest with you.
Councillor Price?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sort of follow-up question to that then, is the tax exemption for the housing as well as the office? Because the offices are in the school building, aren't they? So wouldn't that already be tax exempt?
This particular permissive tax, it may be exempt at the school building. It depends on how it's actually structured at the school building, whether they're leasing that out to Desert Sun. But I can say on this particular site that they actually made an application for is for the residential component down here on, I can't remember the address, down here on Main Street. Where are we here? Yeah, it's 5825 Main Street.
So it's kind of a follow-up to that then. So if, just so I can kind of understand how the exemptions work, so say like a place of worship has a business
Mhm.
that they're renting outside of there, does that affect their
Yes.
their status at all?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll give you another example, for example, and I won't use this community, but I'll use the Justice Institute in New Westminster. They have a cafeteria that they lease out to a third party to run the cafeteria. The Justice Institute, that whole facility itself is tax exempt, but as soon as they sign that lease to run that, then it now becomes taxable.
The entire,
No, just the
just that
portion.
Okay. So that could be a similar situation to Desert
Dep-
Sun, I guess.
Possibly. You'd have to see if it's a lease or just, I don't know.
Councillor Mattes?
So again, the question would be is, if we're voting on this, are we voting on the whole package? Are we picking and choosing? How does the process work? I can get some clarification.
Through to Councillor Mattes, you would be voting currently on the exemptions for taxation on that particular piece of property, which includes 16, there was about 22 total units of residential that they rent out. From looking at the financial statements, looking at the program that they submitted, they run, as I said, they run a vast array of programs. I can't tell you, obviously, like a $10,000 exemption would be applied to their budget as a whole. And so I can't tell you it's just going to be for counseling or it's going to be for counseling young parents, etc. It's just going to be used to help their whole operation.
Councillor Schwarzenberg?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Leahy, I don't know if you know this, but perhaps Ms. Cowan knows. Before Desert Sun took over this site, it was still low-cost housing, or more affordable housing. Did it have an exemption at that time before Desert Sun took it over?
Not to my knowledge, not on this piece of property.
No, not on this piece of property.
So that's kind of a tough one because we give an exemption to Kiwanis for their housing, and now do we exempt this one or not? That's a tough call.
Well,
And they ran before without an exemption, so now that Desert Sun's taken them over, now they want an exemption.
And just through the chair to your worship, I'm not advocating this, but it does allow leeway from 0% exemption to 100% exemption. You can, and I don't know what that percentage would be, so you could phase it in or not allow it at all, or allow the whole thing. It's totally up to council.
I'll make a couple comments. I know that they run the men's shed off of that property.
Yes.
And the safe house is something that is, you know, a pretty important piece of a building for people to provide shelter for somebody in need. I know those two are there. The men's shed is on that property and the safe house is on that property, but the rest of them, I believe, aren't rented to anybody in particular. I'm not sure of the criteria to be able to rent a place there. Do you have to have a minimum income, or if you make a certain amount, above a certain amount, your rent depends on that. I think I would be willing to support this, but not at 100%. Especially, I would have to see some correlation between the income being used to provide all the other services that are being provided here. But there is still a large amount of funding that seems to come from a lot of different sources as well, other than the potential rent there, which may be used to just maintain the property. Councillor Mattes.
Thank you, Worship. Through the CFO. Mr. Leahy, so I'm wondering, I'm just thinking forward to the Elliston-Macola housing project. Would we be able to, just for example, say start with 100% exemption in year one, and then back it off to maybe assist in getting the project off the ground, and then sort of weaning them off of the tax exemption over the years?
It depends, and I don't mean to waffle. It really depends upon, once it's built, and seeing those agreements that they would have with their clients, and who's obviously it's the Macola, and so we'd have to see that whole arrangement. BC Assessment are the ones that first of all go into a property and decide on the classification of the property and what's it going to be assessed at. Once they determine that classification, then depending on what that classification is, council may be in a position of permissively exempting. But like I said, really, first of all, we'd have to walk through the process with the assessment authority.
Thank you. I mean, it is tough because I feel like we've set a precedent with Kiwanis, and we want to do what we can to help with organizations like Deserts and Kiwanis and affordable housing. We don't want to eat away our tax base either.
The difference would be is that Kiwanis went into this as low-cost housing right from the start, as opposed to this was previously an operating business, and that they're now converting to, and that is now being operated through a society that is asking for tax status.
And as far as my understanding goes, you're not evicting anybody. It's, as people move out, that becomes a new affordable housing unit.
So,
Councillor.
no, I was going to make a motion, but I'll let
Councillor Mattes.
Well, I was just gonna comment that I'm like a bit waffling now that you brought up that point, because when I read the application, and I maybe should have focused in more on the address, but when I read what they provided in the application, all of the counseling services and the safe house and et cetera, really we all just heard it. I just assumed that the application was for the office and the living quarters, and didn't zero in on the fact that it was just the living quarters. But when I hear the conversation going around and we're comparing it to potential future below market housing developments, I can still see the benefit in providing an exemption to this organization, because as our CFO said, any savings that they realize are going to go directly back into providing services, all of the services listed in our reasons for exemption, directly back to our community. So right into more counseling and right into more of the services that are so important to our community members. So I could see how they're different than just low cost housing development that may come forward in the future.
Sidhu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to take note that it says, number 4, it says Oliver Kiwanis Senior Housing, Citizens Housing, Land and Improvements. That's for their market that's down in it's not the actual housing. It's not the housing that it is, it's for their market that they have down in the industrial area.
So they pay taxes on their housing?
I do believe so.
Yeah, I can say the challenge with what Councillor Ventimiglia brought up, the only challenge I have is how much of that rent is going to those services, or how much is being being used to pay for operating the facility, repairing roofs and different things like that. That's kind of a slippery slope, but there is a couple of services, the men's shed, like I mentioned, and the safe house that are unique for sure, which could provide a percentage of a tax exemption if you look at just those two pieces of property, or square footage of those two buildings.
Yeah.
Councillor Mattes?
I'm just looking back as a clarification there, I see further up on the list of over Kiwanis Senior Citizens Housing, or
Yeah.
however it's written,
Lands,
that there's two addresses on Kootenai Street,
Yeah.
land surrounding the seniors housing, and then there's a third address down on Summer Road where they run their market. Now that that's been brought up, I'm less inclined, although again, it's all for community benefit, I'm less inclined to give the, because they are running a business down there, I am less inclined to give a tax exemption on that property as well. But be that as it may, I will take a stab at this. And the motion would be that council give first, second, and third reading to the permissive tax exemption bylaw 1386, and that staff undertake the statutory notice requirement as outlined in the community charter prior to the adoption of the bylaw, and further that the Desert Sun Counseling and Resource Society at 5825 Main Street be limited to a 10% tax exemption. That's on the basis of two buildings at a time.
So, can I go with, helping you do that resolution? No? Okay. Because you need to amend the bylaw.
Before you give
Because the bylaw states what it is. So you're doing something after you've given 3 readings to the bylaw. So I'm
I
asking you to
understand.
put the,
So you're talking
Amending.
procedurally that the motion would be to amend the bylaw,
yeah,
to read that the DSRC at 5825 Main Street be limited to a tax,
10% tax.
10% tax exemption.
That's,
I get it, so it's the order.
yes. I'm not asking to change the motion.
Again, procedurally, that we then can give first, second, third reading at the same time?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to come back?
Yeah.
So I'm all in favor of changing the order, if that's what it takes to do it right.
Councillor Schwarzenberg?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Leahy, when did you say this had to be done by?
October 31. But it has, because we have to pass the bylaw in 2 meetings, so, and I know you have
We
FCM.
canceled the second meeting, and I'm just wondering if there's time to, before we go through this, to look at all the assisted housing components that we have now and try and make them all the same somehow, as far as Kiwanis and Desert Sun. And Kiwanis, I mean, we have those 2 properties on whatever street that is, Kootenai, and then the one on Sawmill Road, but they also run part of that complex over by Tuckalnua School, Barbara Crest. And do they pay full taxes on that portion?
Yeah, I'd have to send
So
some.
it's kind of
Yes, we do.
a mixed bag.
CEO?
Due to the fact that prior to adoption of this bylaw, we do have to advertise, there would not be, I don't think the timeline
Understand.
to do that would allow this to happen.
It'd certainly require more work next year.
So you can go one year.
Yeah,
CEO?
thank you. You do have, this is currently for a 4-year period, you do have the option of changing it to a 1-year period, and then doing it, letting us look at it so that you can put this forward for the next 3.
I'd be more comfortable with that.
I'll be happy to change the motion accordingly then. For second, probably, I'm not sure where you're at for a period of 1 year in that sentence.
That the bylaw be for a 1-year period. your motion?
Again, the motion is that council amend the permissive tax exemption bylaw 1386 by limiting Desert Sun Resource Center at 5825 Main Street to a 10% tax exemption, and that permissive tax exemption bylaw 1386 be for a 1-year period, and council give first, second, and third reading to a permissive tax exemption bylaw 1386. That staff undertake the statutory notice requirement as outlined in the community charter prior to adoption of the bylaw. That's amended.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Councillor Grice?
So I am not in favor of the motion as written. I think that 10% is a number that was just pulled out of the air. We don't know that only those 2 units are being used for these purposes right now. I'd prefer to have more information, and if not, at least up that amount to, I don't want to just pull a number out of the air. I mean, I don't think that's an appropriate way to make a decision. I think we need more information, at least if we're basing it on how many of those units are being used for affordable housing or for their services, we need to know how many.
Councillor Mattes?
I appreciate Councilor Grice's point of view, but we don't have any further information tonight, and tonight's the night we have to take action. So, on the basis of 2 services out of 18 buildings, that's 1.8, which would be 10%.
What are you basing those 2 services on?
That's on the men's shed and the concrete safety house.
Safe house.
But we don't know if there's more.
The men's shed operates 3 hours a week. I'm giving it full status at 10%.
I did attend an open house there earlier this year and had a walkabout of the facility. My understanding is there's 1 safe house there, and then there's the med shed there, and the rest are rental units. From my attending your open house there.
Are any of them affordable housing units at this point though, or are they still all the original renters?
I would think it's possible some of them are affordable housing units. At this point, I guess I would have to say I would support the motion because I'm not sure we should be giving tax exemption to affordable housing units. Especially in this case, or just in general, just because you're an affordable housing unit, you should get a tax exemption. I think the one thing that I'm unclear of here is the money that they're raising from the affordable housing units. What are they using that for? Is it some of it going back into providing the counseling services, which would give me some comfort that we could give them a larger tax exemption, but if it's going to maintain the residences and do the capital works on that property, so those houses are heated and cooled and airtight from the weather, so to speak, then I would be less inclined to support a larger tax exemption. For 1 year, I could live with that, and then we'd have more information going forward. Councillor Mattes?
I would just like to add that I 100% support where Councillor Grice is coming from. It's not the best way to make decisions, to just pull a number out of the air, because that's all we've got, and we're in a time crunch. But that being said, the only reason I'm comfortable with the motion the way that it is knowing that it's only for 1 year. 10% is better than 0%. I don't think that we want to go 50% and then next year pull it back to 10 or 20 if we figure out that's the number. I'm of the opinion from the limited information that we have so far that, like I said before, any savings that are made is, I mean, even if it does go back here to improving the buildings, that's going back into sort of looking for services that benefit our multiple community members. So I do think that's important. But all of that being said, the reason I'm comfortable with things that we've written right now is knowing that we now have the time to take the time to do the research that we want to do, and we're going to come back to this in a year. Instead of 4, the way that it was originally.
Thank you, Worship. So I am more comfortable with the changing it to a 1-year time period. I think I would ask the staff in the future to give us more time in the future if we do have more questions, to be able to, for you to come back to us with more information when we do have to make decisions like this, so that we don't have to just make them would still be in favor of a higher percentage of tax exemption. I think we're well aware of the work that Desert Sun Counseling Center does for the community. 10% is quite low, in my opinion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just looked at the calendar for October, and there is a possibility that we could bring it back to council on the 15th, advertise that week and the next week, and then be able to adopt it on the 28th. So there is time still to, if council would like to postpone this, they have that ability to, and we can still meet the end of the October deadline.
Councillor Mattes.
So if that were to be council's wish, what's the proper procedure? That we
You put a-
table the motion on the board or postpone the motion on the board?
A motion of postponement takes precedent over what's been put on the table already.
Councillor Mattes.
I would also caution council that you may find out that in fact this money is all going right back into it. And although it is a not-for-profit business, it is a business, and we are not allowed to subsidize businesses. And by giving a tax exemption, it essentially becomes a subsidy. So I would caution council about it. You may get an answer that you don't like.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would disagree that it's a business. I would say that it's a service for our community, a nonprofit organization, not a business. And I'd rather hear an answer that I don't like and have the information that I need rather than make a decision without the information that's required.
Councillor Mattes.
So with all that being said, I'd like to make a motion to postpone until our
October 15th.
October 15th council meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Do we need to add anything in there about what information we're looking for?
And I guess to allow staff to provide additional information with regards to Desert Sun.
Well, also,
And-
I
and
made some
affordable
notes.
housing.
Yeah, affordable housing in the town of Oliver, and each individual property and how it's taxed and the amount they're paying, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'll accept that friendly amendment if that's what it was.
She can't make it.
I can't.
Somebody wanna make that friendly amendment?
You?
Yeah, I don't know what I actually need to say, but
You just want to make sure that
I like the motion the way it's written.
the information was provided to you.
Absolutely.
All right, any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 2, official community plan amendment bylaw 1370.07 and zoning amendment bylaw 1380.08, 5931 Airport Street, affordable housing development, referred to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Director of Development Services did go through this application during the public hearing, so it is now before council for a third reading, and that it be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for sign off on the bylaw amendment prior to adoption. So that's for the official community plan amendment bylaw 1370.07 and zoning amendment bylaw 1380.08 be read a third time.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Excuse me, we've had quite a bit of conversation on this and a public hearing, and I'm willing to move the recommendation as written.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Mattes. Any further discussion? Councillor Grace.
I just wanted to comment on the correspondence received from the airport advisory committee. I'm not sure what their title is exactly, but I thought it was quite interesting, their suggestions to make sure that the tenants are given some sort of written awareness of the airport activity, and I don't know if that's something, I don't think it's up to us to direct the housing corporation to do that, but I think it would be good for them to note that that's been suggested and that it's alleviated issues in other communities.
See you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have provided them with a copy of the comments.
I assume so.
Councillor Mattes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is there any opportunity for us, either at this stage or at the building permit stage, to put that type of condition in place?
I'm just thinking it's after third reading.
So no opportunity now, would there be later on during any development stages?
You might be able to do it during the DP. No, not during the DP.
Okay, that answers the question.
They have been made aware of it though.
Have we moved this? Seconded?
Yeah.
Then, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to business, item 1066 Road 2, non-farm use application. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is for an ALR non-farm use application for 1066 Road 2. The purpose of this report is for Council to pass a resolution on an ALR non-farm use application for the removal of a covenant that prohibits a residential dwelling from being constructed on the subject property. So the subject property is located in the southwest corner of our town, on the corner of Road 2 and Fairview. Subject property is zoned agriculture by zoning bylaw 1380. Subject property is designated as agriculture by official community plan bylaw 1370. So a bit of a background, the property was created in the early 1920s through the registration of Plan KEP 1789. At that time, the property encompassed the three neighboring parcels, which was 1092 Road 2, 1181, and 1171 Fairview Road. Each of those three properties were subdivided from the subject property at different times since the 1920s. The most recent subdivision occurred in 1997 when 1171 Fairview was created. As part of that subdivision, a covenant was placed on the subject property by the ALC, which prohibits a residential dwelling from being constructed upon it. So the proposal now before Council is that the applicant has applied to the ALC to remove this covenant to build a dwelling for the owner to live and work on the farm, which has triggered the requirement for a non-farm use application. Section 25(3) of the Agricultural Land Commission Act states that a non-farm use application must not proceed unless authorized by a resolution of the local government. So the proposed location, as you can see on the map, is right here along Fairview Road. Some photos of the subject property. This is a view looking from right here on Fairview Road, looking towards the property. That's the photo on the left there, where the proposed dwelling would go. So it would involve the removal of some trees. And then the existing storage building along Road 2. So when I go back to the map here, that's the storage building there. That's the only structures that are currently on the property. So I thought I mentioned Bill 52. So on February 22nd, 2019, amendments to the ALC Act and use regulation were passed pertaining to residential use of farmland. With this amendment, the total floor area of a dwelling must not exceed 500 meters squared, which is 5,382 square feet. Their definition of floor area does not include basements or attached garages or carports. So this restriction will help to ensure that impacts on the farm will be limited with the construction of a new dwelling on this property, if permitted by Council and the ALC. And as per section 46(6) of the ALC Act, a local government, so Council may further restrict this number if they feel so, but that would need to be done through a bylaw amendment. So if Council decided that 5,400 square feet is a bit excessive, then you could pass a bylaw to limit and restrict going forward. anyone that builds a house on agricultural land could be limited to say 3,000 square feet, but that would be done through a bylaw. And I think most of this started because of the mega mansions in Richmond. So you can see on the right there's a mega mansion. Some of the staff rationale for support. So ultimately, a single detached dwelling is a permitted use in our bylaws, and it's permitted in the ag zone, and there's no other dwellings on this property. So a dwelling situated in the proposed location will have minimal impacts on the farming of a 9.3 acre property, which is a pretty significant sized property. I think if it was a 3 or 4 acre property and now you're introducing a home with a driveway, it's going to have more of an impact. This is quite a large farm. And an owner living on the farm can increase productivity of the farm and enhance security of the property as well. So some of the options for council are to support the staff recommendation, deny the staff recommendation, or refer back to staff. And with that, the staff recommendation is that council support ALR application 2019-21 for the subject property located at 1066 Road 2. And this is an ALR non-farm use application for the removal of a covenant that prohibits a residential dwelling from being constructed on the subject property. And that council directs staff to forward the application to the ALC with support from council. That's it, thank you. And the applicant is here if council feels if they have any questions. The agent actually is here. Thanks.
Councillor Mattes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we have any guarantees that that will be the location of the house?
No, I mean, no, there wouldn't be a guarantee, no.
I don't support this application on the basis of what the Department of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture said. And that it was put there for a reason quite some time ago. There's proposed house would remove existing orchard, and more importantly, there are numerous lots and houses for sale in the immediate area that could provide a home for the landowner or farmer. In actual fact, the landowner lives 100 meters away from this property on Rockcliffe Road, just around the corner from the property, directly almost across the road from the property. So I'm not sure that the requirement for council to give permission to build a house where they were told when they purchased the property many years ago, they knew of this condition, so I'm not sure why we would override it. So I'll be voting no.
Councillor Benjamin.
I have to admit, when I read the report, I was a bit surprised that there would be such a covenant on such a large piece of property, and maybe this is a common practice and I'm just unaware. I'm not the ALC, but it seems that a proper covenant would have been no further subdivision, for example. To have a near 10-acre property that you can't have your home on seems a bit, I don't know, just a bit strange. So I am in favor of the staff recommendation from what I've read and from what I know.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Worship. I'm in agreement with Councillor Ventimiglia. I think property this size could and should have a house on it if the applicant wants a house on it. And I would say that we are not overriding anything. We are giving our opinion, and it's still up to the ALC whether they approve it or deny it. So I would be voting in favor as well.
Thank you, Worship. I'm also in favor, but I wonder if, as part of our recommendation, we can add the subject that the home not be severed, like if that's sort of part of our recommendation. That the site not be, so that this can't happen again. So if they build the house, it can't be subdivided out a fourth time.
That's how the covenant came into place in the first place. The last house that was subdivided was part of this property. It was subdivided off, and the provision at the time was you can subdivide that house off, but it's the last time. I was here when it was done, and the farmer that owned the property, he did that with all three houses, and finally the Agricultural Land Commission said, enough is enough. You can do it this time, and you cannot do it anymore. This is farmland, it is not a housing development. And that's what the ruling was when it occurred back then. So the house was part of the property at the time. And he was able to increase his value by subdividing the house off, selling it separately, and then selling the farm separately. The owner knew it when they moved in.
Yeah, thank you. So
Councillor Mattes.
my question would be around wording then. So in my mind, allowing this application to go forward to the ALC and possibly have a home built on the property is different than subdividing off a lot for a home. Are those two different things, or are, because I'm not looking at this as further subdivision,
No.
which is what happened. You have another lot that you can sell off. In my mind, this is a home being built on part of a near 10-acre parcel that goes with the parcel, unless I'm understanding it wrong.
That was already done once.
But then it was subdivided off, so we're talking about not subdividing, but allowing a home to go with the land. Is there a way to make a distinction? I mean, I don't know.
That was my question as well. Can that be part of the letter? That yes, we'll support it as long as it doesn't get subdivided off.
Until the next person applies.
Yeah, I mean, council has the ability to put whatever conditions or wording they want in this case.
Sorry.
Councillor Mattes.
To be clear, the applicant isn't asking for a subdivided lot. They're asking for a home to be built on the property.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I should add a bit of information too. So when they first applied, the applicant wanted the house in this corner up here. But ultimately, to do that, the sewer main would have had to have been extended. So the sewer actually stops here. So it comes from the west, stops here. So they would have had to extend the sewer main all the way down there. So most likely, they would have built a septic field, and then that would have had a bigger impact on farming. So we talked with them about possibly moving the house to this location as a good option, and the applicant felt that that was a good option. Because the sewer main stops basically right there, so they could just bring a connection in there into the house, and there wouldn't be much of a driveway either. But, so that's just an important part I wanted to add.
So just so I'm clear, the history was, or we were kind of at this point, and somebody asked to build a house on there. And then after the house was built, they wanted to subdivide it off. Is that the sort of flow of events?
Yeah, I think it might be worth getting the applicant to speak a little bit more on the history of the property, since I'm pretty sure the applicant was involved in the application in '97.
No, but I will speak if I may.
Okay, yeah, sure, please, come on.
This orchard was known as the Pole Orchard. And Mr. Pole, in his wisdom, when he owned the property, he subdivided the house in the corner off under the home site severance. And the Agricultural Land Commission approved it. Home site severance came in 1972. He built the house, and then he applied for another home site severance. The Agricultural Land Commission approved it. He sold his house, he built another one. And being an industrial individual, I guess he applied again, and he got the third one, sold his second house, built his third house. The Agricultural Land Commission said, what's going on here? We got to stop this. So they put the covenant on the property, no more houses. And 15 years ago, Mrs. Kael bought the property, and her and her husband were running it. He was killed in a car accident. They had 3 children. So she elected to buy that house there because she couldn't build on the property, and it was convenient for her children to go to school. And her proximity to the house, to the property, was relatively close. Every time I've gone to see her during the day, she's in the orchard. The reason why she would like to build on the property, 1, her children are educated now, they've left home. 2, she's actually paying taxes on 2 pieces of property. Why can't she build a house on a piece of property she owns, sell the other house? She's closer to operating and the security of the orchard. I think it was a little unfair, and it was sort of a knee-jerk reaction by the Agricultural Land Commission, saying this guy is really taking advantage of this home site severance. We got to stop it. And by stopping it, you put a covenant on it, nothing happens. It's in the land registry, it's on the title. And I think after 15 years of Mrs. Kael operating the orchard, she deserves the opportunity to build on her property and to get rid of her other house, be where she works, and where she can live. And that's why I'm supporting her as an agent. So, is there any questions?
So, okay, it's a different owner of the orchard
Than the original
than the
Mr.
original
Pohl.
owner. Would council still have a say at the end of the day? Say the scenario played out.
Yes.
Who has a say on whether
Okay,
you can have this home site separate?
If the council endorses it and it goes to the ALC, and if the ALC endorses it, it comes back to local government and they approve a dwelling on the property. She still has to submit plans for a building and apply for an application, and council has a decision, or planning has a decision at that time.
No, I'm just asking about after the house is built.
Oh.
If she wanted to do the home site separate
No.
scenario again.
It couldn't happen, because you have to own the property prior to 1972.
Yeah.
If you don't own it prior to 1972, you don't qualify. In this community, I've been involved in several home site severances, but unfortunately, this is not sun-bleached hair, and a lot of my clients have expired because of the 1972 criteria.
Councillor, yeah.
So just further to that, should she at some point in time, or a future owner want to remove that home from the property, they would have to come to council, an application would have to come to this council and
ALC.
council of the day for a subdivision.
Yeah, ultimately it would go to the ALC, it would be a subdivision application that would be referred to the town
Through
council.
here.
Yeah, to comment on, just like in this case, the town's making a recommendation, but ultimately it's up to the ALC to make a decision.
And I think with my experience with the ALC in the last 4 or 5 years, the probability of a subdivision happening on that property on a scale of 1 to 10 is a -18. And council does have the power to approve it, reject it, suspend it, do whatever they want. But in this particular case, within your community, what you're doing is you're allowing an individual to build a house on their property, so they're not supporting 2 properties, they can actually live on the property that they own.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess then to alleviate our concern about the house being built somewhere else, it has to come back to us before that point.
Yeah, and she won't be able to do
Are you
a
talking?
severance, there won't be a severance being able to be done because she hasn't owned it long enough.
No, not the severance, but I'm talking about, like, right now, the plan is for the house to be built where that star is.
Yes.
But if she decides she wants to move it back to the other corner of the property, that would have to come to us first.
I can add to that. No, it wouldn't have to come back to council. No, it would be just a building permit application, and we would look at the setbacks of the property and see if it meets that. Council could approve it subject to the location as displayed in attachment. I mean, I'd have to read my report, but there's a figure in my report that they could say in the proposed location as attachment C or whatever it is. Like, that's an option.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Hull, is it possible if this is approved and an application, a building permit comes through, that they be required to hook up to town sewer, so that if they want to put it somewhere else on the property, they'd have to pay for the sewer connection? Or it would make more sense, obviously, to put it where it's closest to sewer?
It's already required.
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have looked at that because of the fact that they were looking at another piece and they were talking about putting septic in. And we did look back, and in talking to the Director of Operations, they would have to have at least, they have enough space, but they would have to take out more trees to put in a septic system. So it would take up more of the ALC land. But to hook up, if they were to go anywhere else on the property, they have to do pumping because of the fact that it
slopes down.
It slopes down instead of up, so
my
it would be very expensive to hook up to our system.
Right, but my question is, can we
You can.
specify that they have to hook up to our sewer system?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mattes.
I could be wrong, I think our bylaws already specify that, and if they don't, I know that the BC Building Code does
Yes.
specify
No, it does.
that if there is septic or a sewer system available, you must hook up.
Yeah.
Good. Councillor Benjamin.
Just for clarification, does the application not have to go forward to the ALC with a site drawing? So wouldn't it be going forward to the ALC showing what's proposed and for where? So that's what they approve.
Yeah, normally we'd just forward the recommendation. This site drawing is different than what the applicant originally submitted, so we could ensure that they have this proper updated site drawing as well.
Okay, so they're not approving specifically a size or in anything, they're just approving a concept.
Yeah, typically.
You're approving taking the covenant off.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, you could make a recommendation that the house is built in accordance with the area illustrated in figure 1, which is figure 1 is the site plan of the council report. So you could make a recommendation that the house is built in that location, if that's what you're worried about.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I think for me, it's not even the location as much, it's more not clearing out more trees to put in a septic field if they don't hook up to water and sewer, they have to.
Thank you, Worship. It does indicate, I do believe, let me just see, you have to be within, if you're within 150
Something, yeah.
150 feet of the sewer line, then you have to. I just wanna, it's rather old, bylaw that it talks to our sewer, so I know that, Sean sent it to me, so if you give me just a minute to grab it. Just gonna look at the bylaw that's at the bottom of this. If a parcel of land upon which there is situated a building occupied, one or more persons abuts a street or lane or other public right of way upon or under which there is laid sanitary sewer, or if such parcel of land is within 150 feet of such sanitary sewer, the owner or occupant of such parcel of land shall connect or cause to be connected the said lands and premises with the sanitary sewer in the manner provided by this bylaw or any other pertinent bylaw of the corporation. So, it has to be within 150 feet.
That's any part of the property, so it's
Yeah,
not where they
the
wanna
part.
put the house.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that, for me, alleviates my concerns that the clearing of more land.
Councillor Benjamin.
So after all of that, I'd just like to move the staff recommendation, as written, that council support, this application located at 106-612, trying to read all the numbers. An ALR non-farm use application for the removal of a covenant that prohibits a residential dwelling from being constructed on the subject property, and that council directs staff to forward the application to the ALC with support from council.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Councillor Grace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council.
Moving to item 2, release of closed resolutions, December to June 30th, 2019. I'll refer to the CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to pass this over to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before council is with regards to the release of the closed resolutions for the period December to June 30th, 2019. The Ombudsman Best Practices Guide indicates that it is good for a council to release closed resolutions if possible. It provides a goal of openness, transparency, and accountability without compromising the interests of the local government. I noticed that there is an error in my report in the background. It says release of closed resolutions for the period January to November 2018. That should have read December to June 30th, 2019. 3 resolutions were in the closed resolutions that council reviewed. The first one was in May to amend the Oliver Fire Department departmental operational guidelines. The second was in July that staff submit a letter of support for Soy-Sinian Band's application for funding to the Pattison Foundation, and that we respond to Mr. Winter advising that the town remains committed to participating financially in the pool feasibility study only, and only if participants are taking part as part of their 2018 existing budget. And lastly, in April 2019 was the appointment of Doug Leahy as the interim chief financial officer. And the resolution before council is
For information.
Just for information. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Mover, Councillor Bentamina, second. Councillor Grace. Further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to correspondence. September 9th correspondence report over to the clerk officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before council has 5 items for information only for council. The first 2 are from the Okanagan Basin Water Board to the Minister, for the province of BC with regards to the Rocky Mountain Ridge mussel and the decision, and as well to the Ministry of Forests, Fisheries and Oceans Canada. The third piece is from the Ministry of Environment, announcing his plastics policy and engagement. I think that goes until the end of September. I do plan on putting that on our social media sites to increase participation from Tom Oliver. And the last 2 pieces are resolution supports at UBCM from the District of Saanich with regards to the proceeds of crime and the cleanup of needles and other harm reduction paraphernalia. The resolution before council is that the above correspondence and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
Councillor Mattes.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second, Councillor Rice. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to reports. First one is the airport manager's report for the month of August 2019.
Move receipt.
Seconded by Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Second report is the building department report for the month of August 2019. Received by Councillor Bentamina, seconded by Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Grace?
Just one question, for 750 Earl Crescent, it said it was an addition, but there was 0 square footage.
Interesting.
They're adding a basement.
That's a good catch.
Nice catch.
$10,000 might be some stairs.
Oh.
Could be a deck.
$10,000 for a deck isn't that much money. That's not enough money for a deck.
For your deck.
For my deck.
This is all over not printed. We have reputable contractors.
Let's check it out.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Grace. Any further discussion? Or call the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. next one is the fire department report for the month of August 2019.
It was easy.
Receipt, seconded. Councillor Antabina. I did have one question.
Sure.
Just looking at some of the items on here, let's see, for example, even some of them were, let's see, burning complaint. I was just a question about the number of firefighters attending some of the events. And some of the events were like not required. So MBA on 1095 McKinney, fire department not required, yet 15 firefighters attended.
I think they got called off, like, they go, but I'll double check.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, if they report in and start, cause it was 9:13, and then at 9:20, they were asked if they were required, so they were already on their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know when you have a call, you don't know what you're into.
Yeah.
You've got people coming and stuff, but I'm just wondering about that.
Okay.
Other than that, there was no more question. Moving our seconder, so any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Councillor Schwarzenberger, report.
Thank you, Worship. Friday, August 30th, I met with the corporate officer to discuss the briefing notes for one of council's upcoming ministers' meetings at UBCM. Thursday, September 5th, I was at an Oliver Tourism Association meeting. And Saturday, September 7th, I joined the mayor and Councillor Ventimiglia in welcoming the Cops for Kids bike riders to Oliver at the Oliver Fire Hall. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Worship. Mostly spent the past couple of weeks enjoying the last of summer here, but I did have a couple events. So Thursday, August 29th, I attended MP Richard Canning's campaign kickoff at Linden Gardens in Culleton. Had a chance to chat with the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. Spoke to him about the Gallagher Lake siphon, the need for federal funding. The good news was he was well aware of the situation already because our MP has been communicating with him about that on a fairly regular basis. He did talk to the parties' commitment to removing some of those funding barriers so that projects like ours don't slip through the cracks. September 4th, I attended the Food Action Advisory Committee meeting and today's meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Mattes.
Thank you, Your Worship. On August 28th, I attended a drive-through breakfast up at the Enola CBC and Med offices to support the Okanagan Nation Alliance fight to end overdose deaths, hence the purple t-shirt that they gave me. The 31st was the National Overdose Day. I learned how to use an naloxone kit, and they gave me one as well. As we approach the federal election, this should be a huge issue for all politicians. It's a medical problem, and it is solvable, and they need to take action on it. There are solutions. Everyone here and everyone you know will be touched in some way by an overdose death. If they haven't been already, they will be, I guarantee it. I also want to shout out to thank you to OIB Councillor Ronnie McGinnis for her work on this issue. She was doing a great job up there. She told a neat story about her grandfather, Sen Tok Chin, who was the last medicine man of the Inky band, and how he had taught her that it isn't our right or role to intervene, and that she didn't believe in preventing overdose, that this was what the Creator had said should happen, and that we're given so many days, and that's just the way that it is. But it has touched her enough times that she's changed her way of thinking, and she realizes that, no, it is actually our job to make life last longer when we have the opportunity. This is one of the opportunities. So, and that kind of tied nicely with the great presentation that we had tonight as well. There's a real need out in the community. So, anyway, enough of that. And then on September 6th, I went to the Small Wheels Park Hot Dog fundraiser at Valley First.
Thank you, Councillor Mattes. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you. Well, like Councillor Price, I felt like I was really busy, but evidently I was spending the last days of summer enjoying summer, and getting ready for back to school prep. I've had we don't attend Tuckaloo at school, but I've had an opportunity to drive by the new works that were done in front of the school, and I just would like to commend staff and our contractors, and I was surprised how quick they pulled it off, but it looks amazing. That speed hump is pretty humpy for I don't know what to call it. It is big. So I assume that it's part of the plan to put some painting or some bright colors there, but I just like to point that out, and maybe we wanna do that as soon as we can, as it's pretty big. As far as council things go, on Wednesday, September the 4th, I attended a Food Action Advisory Committee meeting. For those that don't already know, if you haven't had an opportunity to visit, the Harvest Hut is in its new location at the Koenig Splash Park, complete with an actual hut that was built by inmates at the OCC.
And painted.
And it's been painted by the volunteers at the Harvest Hut, but that's still running Mondays for the next couple of weeks, 4 to 7 in the afternoon. Bring something if you have it to share, take something home if you need it, go and take something if you don't have it to share. It's just a great experience. Thursday, September the 5th, I attended the regional district in Penticton. It was brought up in our correspondence, but I also wanted to make mention of the engagement that's ongoing right now as far as single-use plastics and all of those sorts of things. So at the regional district, the decision was made to engage the province of BC and ask the province and the federal government to work on this issue. And the ACT website, which you're going to be able to find on town information, is cleanbc.gov.bc.ca/plastics, which has a 5-minute maximum survey to provide some feedback over the next couple of weeks. And this past Saturday, Cops for Kids down at the fire hall as well. And that's the end of my report.
Thanks, Councillor Myaia. August 31st and September 1st, kind of a 2-day, I did crime watch with my wife. We drove around, had a look at the town, different times of the day. September 7th, I was at the fire hall with Cops for Kids. Pretty inspiring group of people. Must be, I think, quite an honor to be involved in that riding for sure. And that evening, I had a small neighborhood grant block party in the Meadows, and it was a big success for sure. It was great for our neighborhood to get together. And I know there was 3 neighborhood grants in Oliver, one in Willowbrook, one in the Oliver area, so one in Willowbrook, one in Vassal Lake, and then the one that I applied for in Oliver. I know they didn't give them all out, and they'd like to give out 40, and I don't know how many they gave out. Do you know, Councillor Myaia?
Oh, thanks for putting me on the spot.
I don't think they gave out all of, well, they didn't give them all out, so it'd be good that, you know, and I know more people are talking about it as I'm talking to people and even at our block party. So hopefully more. I mean, there's $500 available for, you know, clubs. It doesn't have to be a block party. It can be all kinds of different events that people do. So that's my report. Upcoming meetings, the Monday, September 23rd meeting has been canceled because of UBCM. The next meeting is this Wednesday, Community Safety and Crime Prevention meeting that we have in Council Chamber here. We have UBCM from September 23rd to 27th, and our next council meeting, regular council meeting, is Thursday, October 15th, 2019. Acting mayor for September, October, and November is Councillor Enola. And the next thing would be public question period.
I just have a couple of comments, if I may. One is on the speed bump across the Tuckaloo School. I think it's a great thing, and I actually have driven over it a couple of times, and I kind of wish it would be able 2 inches higher yet.
Oh my goodness.
That slows the traffic right down, and if they don't slow down the first time, they will the next time.
That's true.
So that I think is good. I'd actually like to see a few more of something like that. As I had mentioned to you, Mr. Mayor, is on Mountain View Drive.
Mm-hmm.
We got a real racetrack going on there. It's up to the council and the towns to what they want to do. I thought we had a good opportunity there when we had the gas line put across The road had already been cut, but I see it's been paved over, so I guess that's not gonna happen.
Councillor Benjamin?
I just have to agree with Mr. Wojcik, I have a fairly small low car for anybody that's seen the green machine around town.
Mhm.
And I can make it over at a crawl, there's no issue with the height, I don't think, but if you don't know it's there, it could potentially be a little bit dangerous, so that's just, the painting, you're gonna slow down whether there's painting or
Well, there's
not really, but.
There's a sign there that says reduce speed.
Right, way down to almost nothing.
My other comment is,
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
We did mention at dinner tonight to the Public Works Director that depending on the results of snow plowing with the speed bumps that we have there and down Station Street now, if the snow plowing works out, it might be something that we have to come up with a design to put in more locations around town.
my other comment was the decision about the ALR. I feel personally myself that that's a wrong decision to be made at council to allow another building to be there, because all we're doing is getting rid of more agricultural land. And that's gonna continue. That's not gonna be the last one by any means. And in that particular case, I feel that the person that owned that property knew about it, but having the other property, so that's my feeling, that, we're just destroying more agricultural land, which we're not getting any more of. That's all I've got.
Thank you, George. I look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Schwarzenegger, second. Councillor Benjamin. Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
Good call.